Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are and where you are listening in. Um, Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Anthony Ray. I'm one of the attorneys here at Ray Law International. So glad that you can join us today. Today we have a little different format as we talk about sort of the top 10 things that we expect that may happen here in our U.S. immigration system here in the U.S. Um, Today I'm joined by Lauren and Hogan. So I'm going to let Lauren briefly introduce herself, and then after that, Hogan, let us know a brief introduction for you as well. Okay.
Hello, my name is Lauren. I'm one of the attorneys here at Ray Law. I've been practicing for about 8 years now, I believe, in immigration. We do employment based and family based immigration. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. We're happy to respond to them at any time. Also, Hogan and I speak Spanish, hablamos español, and Anthony speaks Japanese. So we'd be happy to answer any questions in those languages as well. Hogan?
Hello, everyone. I'm Hogan, one of the legal assistants here. Still in law school, one day attorney. Like Lauren said, you can ask any question you want. Doesn't have to be any particular topic. If it's like a visa or for a family member or for a friend, you can ask it in English, Spanish, or like we said, Japanese. Also, we periodically will have our contact information. If you're too shy to leave a comment, you can also send us a message, an email, and we'll address it accordingly.
Let me do a brief introduction our before Hogan goes ahead with the first question. Just a little bit about the firm. We have 3 offices in Chicago, Michigan, and in New Jersey. We represent mainly corporations throughout the United States, but we also represent family-based individuals also throughout the U.S. and throughout the world. There is a lot of challenges out there. Oftentimes, people think they can file it on their own, and they run into issues because, as you'll find out today, as we're talking, the USCIS and the Department of State, they really change things up all the time. Feel free to feel free to ask those questions like they said. The chat's open. We're going to take your questions. This is really about your time as well. So whether it's employment-based, whether it's family-based, or just any immigration question, or maybe you have a question for one of the speakers, and depending on what the question is, we can answer that. But we're always looking forward to speak with you guys. As we go through our discussion today, if you have a question or want to set up a free consultation with us, go ahead, call us. Beatrice um, and other support staff, are waiting, ready to make an appointment. We'd be more than happy to talk in more detail about your immigration situation. So Vladimir and Beatrice are waiting for your calls. Feel free to call. You can also email if you would like to email. Maybe you want to email or send a message in Japanese. So go ahead and email that, send it in Japanese, and we have staff ready to respond. Or go ahead and put it in the chat. I would be great because you know what? Your question may be the same question that other people have. So you never know. Put that question out there and it'll not only help you, but those around you, okay? So we're going to get started, and I'm going to ask Hogan to go ahead with the first sort of topic or change that we're going to discuss today. Go ahead, Hogan.
So the first question we have is, what will happen to deferred action for childhood arrival, so the DACA program, which protects certain undocumented immigrants who arrived in the United States as children from deportation and allows them to work legally?
All right. I'm going to start off, but afterwards, Lauren's going to give her insight, and then Hogan, he's going to give his input as well of what we can expect in 2023. I'll try not to answer everything, but guys, jump in anytime. All right. So as everyone knows, DACA was introduced in 2012. So we've been living with DACA for over a decade now. It's essentially in our DNA. It's a part of life. It's a part of who we are as a country. It's a part of who we are as immigration attorneys as we practice. A lot of my DACA clients are long-term friends, and we know their families, and they're just awesome. We're always hoping that Congress will do something other than kick the can down the road, not just for our DACA holders, but we can look to our DACA situation and as an example. We haven't had issues with the program when we give people authorization to work and authorization to stay here. Let's take that first step. There's millions of people who could benefit from this and are in need of this. So what can we expect? From my standpoint, unfortunately, I'm a little pessimistic. Maybe we have a few more optimistic individuals on our call today. But unfortunately, there's a lot of division still in Congress, even after the midterms that we experienced. And I'm not overly optimistic that we can get anything positive done to move DACA forward. Now, the administration, I'm going to let someone else talk about this, but the administration is trying to take steps to strengthen or build the argument for DACA to be lawful, and that's tying everything up with the Texas court down there. But Congress needs to act at the end of the day. Not just in immigration, but in many areas. And this is one where DACA holders, recipients, dreamers have really been sort of held at bay. And, these are professionals. We're not just talking kids anymore. These are adults. They have families. They're doctors, lawyers, accountants, pilots. I mean, they're throughout our whole culture and our system. And after a decade, at some point, we just got to call them family. So initially, my first impression is I don't see much changing in 2023. Even if there's changes in the way that we have the foundation of DACA, will that be enough for the courts to move forward and for the Supreme Court to see DACA as a favorable program? So that's my first comment. Who's next?
Yeah, so I would say that, we wish that it would be opened up to everyone and kind of newer DACA arrivals. Right now, it's closed to renewals, and we pretty much expect that to continue. So if you're lucky enough to already have it, that's great. But unfortunately, some younger people who maybe came of age after DACA was closed, they're kind of going to be out of luck until Congress does something. And with the current Congress as it is, it's split between Republicans and Democrats. We don't know how much they're going to be able to get passed. There's only so much that the executive branch can do. It really is supposed to be congressional action that changes the laws. Executives can only do so much to help these people out. So even though there is a Democratic president, there may not be so much they can do until Congress decides to act.
Yeah, I would echo the same sentiment. I'm a DACA recipient for my entire life. I'm 27, I think, might be 28. I need to double check. But I've lived in the country since I was one, so majority of my life. I don't even remember what my home country looks like. But it's really just living quasi undocumented really changes and how you perceive government. Sometimes you're like, well, they never do anything. They don't help anyone. But then when you get older, like I did, you really start to realize there's more at play. Especially like Lauren said, it's very unlikely, even though there is a Democratic president and popular support supports a solution for DACA recipients. However, the Congress really isn't reflective of the population for the past 20 plus years, where even though it's a majority opinion that it should pass, or it should be a solution. There's mechanisms in Congress, such as the filibuster, or in the House where it's a little bit more fickle. Some years there's over like 90% support, but then the Senate, you can never get that 60% threshold. Or in last year, I think it was, one or two senators really didn't want, moderate Democrats didn't want to get rid of the filibuster, which is kind of upsetting, especially when you want a solution. But the executive really is, at the forefront here. I actually, my undergrad, I wrote a paper on prosecutorial discretion. I think the key issue now that the Biden administration tried to solve, was the work permit and the status, where the court really didn't have a problem with the deferred action status. They had more of a problem with the Social Security and the work permit, as deemed that as outside discretion, prosecutorial discretion. In that paper a long time ago, I wrote, how states' attorneys can decide whether or not to prosecute someone. Same thing, the executive can decide whether or not to prosecute someone for immigration offenses, especially when that person has never committed a crime. They pay taxes. They can decide not to deport that person. But then the court had the issue of, well, you can then give them a work permit. Um,
So,
yeah.
Hogan, one of the things I wanted to jump in, stay on, keep your mic on though. One of the things I think so many people look at, especially foreign nationals, and I don't know, you can give me your thoughts, but a lot of people just look at the, I don't want to say surface, but more on the, what do you want to say, the physical, family and time spent and paying taxes. And, through these things, they should somehow receive certain benefits. And often, as you had just mentioned, when we get into the minutia of the legal aspects of, what is an executive order or a policy memo or a regulation, people really miss that or don't really have a full understanding of what that is. So do you think probably over the past decade, the DACA community has had a better understanding of the technical side of why this is even still an issue after a decade? Or do you think people are still looking at, hey, I paid taxes for over a decade, and I can't even get, certain benefits, What do you
Um,
what do you see or hear or think about that?
I'm actually in a lot of like self-help DACA groups. A lot of them, um, are doctors or hold master's degrees, MBAs, dentists, all over the spectrum. But
Sure.
even though there's a lot of people with advanced education, it's still complicated unless you live in the legal world. Where I think one of the most common in within at least the DACA community is, Fatah's already went to the Supreme Court. Why is it still an issue? Like, I think this is the
Yeah.
third time it's going to go up to the Supreme Court. And really the first two times, is just procedural, or this is not how you end the program. They didn't really decide whether or not DACA was illegal. Similarly, there's other little issues where the executive can do this but not that, where the understanding is just so mixed up and jumbled. Even myself, I mix it up, like what are they arguing? If I wasn't a combination of being a DACA recipient and in law school, I think it would be more complicated to understand. And there's not very many DACA recipients that seek, above a undergraduate level degree. And even though I'm pursuing one, it's still very, very difficult to understand, the legal
Mm.
arguments of why it should be unlawful or why it is lawful. Um, and I think that trickling down, I'm not saying I'm not the smartest, but I'm also not live under a rock where I don't read anything or understand anything.
Yeah.
But I think at large, the limited community of 600,000 plus, DACA recipients, I think there is a big confusion. Just
Hmm.
I think part of it is lack of understanding our governmental branches,
Hmm.
how they operate. Because another, big, criticism is that the Democratic Party didn't do anything under Obama, even though they controlled the House, Senate, and executive. Similarly with Biden, first half of his term, he controlled, House, Senate, and executive. Like, well, they should pass something to help the dreamers.
Yep.
But it's not really that simple, where one person can just hold up the entire process, or a group of 5 people can hold up the entire process. So there's really lack of understanding, and it's due a lack of understanding because
Mhm.
it's unnecessarily difficult.
Hogan, thank you so much for that. There's a lot of things that we all expected once the Biden administration took place, which has not come to fruition yet. So we're going to talk about some more of those in our next. Let's move on to the next one we have here. Go ahead, Hogan.
The temporary protected status (TPS) program, which allows individuals from certain countries facing armed conflict, natural disaster, or other extraordinary conditions to live and work temporarily in the United States. Question mark.
Yeah, so for this one, I'll just jump in. They are kind of expanding TPS. Recently, Biden came out with a program similar to TPS for Haiti for people to be able to apply prior to coming to the border so that people aren't, we have this huge issue at the border. You probably see it in the news all the time. So this way people can apply prior to entering the US. That's, a similar program to TPS. There's a list of designated countries that can apply for this. So if you're not sure if your country applies, you can always check. And they do have to get renewed. So even if at one point your country is designated, you have to be sure that when you're extending your status that you still have that, because maybe the US government will say that your country has resolved its issue even though you may not agree, things like that. So that's kind of generally what's going on. We expect it to pretty much continue. Things aren't getting better in a lot of places over the world, but maybe Anthony or Hogan have some more things to say on that.
I can say some stuff. This morning I actually got my email brief. I signed up to a company that sends you basically explanations of everything. And for this one, I didn't know about it in the background, but then the brief I got in the email, they give me a little insight, where the Biden administration is being really criticized for this program, not because they're doing it, but the way they're doing it, where the countries targeted tend to live in turmoil or very severe natural disasters or civil unrest. And the big thing about this program is that they use an app on the phone for final inspection and picture and biometrics. And the big issue is, well, in these countries, especially I think the one they were highlighting was Haiti, where they either don't have internet, they don't have electricity, or if they do, it's very limited. And the government, some in other countries, the government controls the internet, or the what goes on in the country, and so they're really being criticized where this essential step that can only be done via a CBP app really is being criticized, and it is unfortunate. They could do something else where they could temporarily process people in the consulate or at a border for that last step if they don't have access to internet or electricity.
Yeah, but how long is it going to take someone to go to the consulate? We know those waiting times are horrible. So, yeah,
No,
there's no real good solution.
no.
For those of you out there listening that don't know, the immigration system or agencies such as the State Department and the USCIS are plagued with long, huge backlogs, and which has sparked a lot of, nationwide lawsuits. So even if you just put in immigration lawsuits, you can see whether, something in your area, whether it's a 601A waiver delay, they're looking at, class actions or nationwide lawsuits regarding that delays in that area. But also, even at the consulates, as Lauren and Hogan were mentioning, just applying for a simple visitor's visa could be, a year to 2 years out. So there's a lot of problems with these agencies that some people may not be initially aware of. So as they introduce this, so for those of you out there that may not be, um, you know, sort of aware of this, but basically, temporary protected status or advanced parole is a special immigration status or protection given to those countries in need. And oftentimes, you'll see this designation change all the time. I was just speaking with a lot of people on intakes. What about what's going on with Venezuela and some people are aware of it, some people don't take advantage of it. This sort of helps adds additional options and protections to those people in those situations. Here in the US, we really can't imagine the struggles that a lot of these individuals face in these countries. So, all right, let's go to the next one.
So I was reminded that I need to give a weather report today because our resident assistant always starts the program with giving the weather report in Chicago. It's raining off today. Let me see, my computer is not loading, but the weather is a little bit chilly. Personally, what I felt is 39 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's supposed to be colder tomorrow. Okay, now we can move on officially or legally. I'm not sure if that was a legal requirement. So the next question is, are people still immigrating to the United States and will it continue in 2023? Because according to Vintage 2022, population estimates released today, net international migration added more than a million people to the U.S. population between July 1st, 2021 and July 1st, 2022.
So to highlight, before we just jump back to the weather, that's about 4 degrees Celsius. For a lot of people, that's pretty cold. We have staff throughout the world, and we often compare about the weather and how nice it is compared to us folks up here in the north. So we actually have really nice weather here in in our Michigan office area. So one of the things I really like this statistic. It doesn't have 2023, but what we are seeing, is people still want to come to the United States. And we're seeing that not just coming, but it's sort of still increasing. Now, part of that may be to other problems in the world, such as, in Europe and in Russia. We've always had calls from people saying, hey, they're throwing missiles and bombs at each other here. Maybe we need to go to the US. But we really do see a strong attraction to the US market and economy and lifestyle we have here. For those of us who are already here, it's awfully expensive with inflation, especially in the housing and your day-to-day gas and food for a lot of people. But because, I think that attraction is going to be there. But part of just the opportunities that we have here in the US, I think we're going to see in 2023, as long as nothing really out of the ordinary happens, we're going to see an increase. But one of the things I wanted to also highlight is we're talking about immigrants, mainly people who are immigrating, but keep in mind, if we end up in a recession this year, usually the visas that, employers, they're not going to issue or bring more people in if there's no work. And that's what we sort of found out in the past pandemic, that when everything stopped and halted, immigration also slowed down and halted. So immigration falls in sync with the economy. When the economy is doing good, immigration improves, especially on the non-immigrant side. When the economy is poor or slow, it's slowing down. So that's a little bit about what we see, and it's very cyclical. Anyone else
Yeah,
want to add to that?
yeah, just that the right now the Federal Reserve is still saying that we are not yet in a recession. Others obviously disagree, but since there is still a strong job market, we are still seeing people need to bring workers in because they just can't find the people to be able to do the job, especially some of these highly specialized jobs where there's a lot of competition. They can't find the people to do it, so they need to look elsewhere. They would hire Americans if they would, if they could, because it's a lot, less hassle than hiring an immigrant. There's filing delays, there's money involved to USCIS to pay the attorney, you have to extend, worry about that person's status, things like that. So, as of right now, we haven't really seen too much of a dip in the actual companies requiring immigrants. But, we'll see if once the Fed declares there is a true recession, if that changes. Obviously, people have been hearing a lot about the tech sector getting hit. So perhaps we'll start to see some of that happening. Obviously, the first people to go, like Anthony said, are going to be the foreign workers, right? Those are probably the easiest people to let go. It's not good for them, but for the company, that's kind of how they see it. So, it, we just don't know. It's hard for the Federal Reserve, it seems, to predict what's going on with inflation and all that. So I don't even want to try because I'm not an economist. So
Yeah, I think yeah, people will definitely still come, which will cause more issues. I think when the laws we have today were written in '97, when the world only had about 5 billion people, and now it's almost 10 billion. And one of the biggest issues in immigration with the backlogs is certain caps, uh, like this amount of people from this country. Um, might have been nice with 5 billion people,
Yep.
maybe not, but now it's doubled. So that issue needs to be resolved. Otherwise, employers or even just family-based immigrants are going to have issues or increased backlogs of not being selected or not being able to come to the country.
Yeah, you really hit on a good point. We haven't seen change since 1990, you know, and that's one of the problems. The world, the business community, life, everything has, moved on and evolved. And immigration, we're stuck. I always joke, but somewhat honestly, tell potential new clients and even clients, immigration is still stuck in the 1950s in the way that they process and think. And, here we are in 2023 and nothing has changed. And hopefully, one of these days, it won't be political suicide for politicians to do what is right to solve the problem because the problem is just growing, you know, it just keeps going.
Only going to get worse.
So, oh, on the recession thing, there's so many indicators. As Lauren had mentioned, the tech sector. I think I heard recently the finance industry was starting to slow down. You know, homes being sold has slowed down. Auto sales is impacted. A lot people may not know, but a lot of people, are either not spending or not buying or holding back because of the potential fear. And that in and of itself, I think Bed Bath and Beyond is on the brink of bankruptcy. I don't know if you guys heard of that. So I, Amazon probably killed it, but who knows? But
yeah, that's a different story.
Yeah, I'm having a baby in April, and I went to a couple Bed Bath and Beyonds and Bye Bye Babies for their
yeah.
bankruptcy sales. It was like
Oh,
90% off. It was nice
ouch.
for
It's a
me.
good deal.
Yeah.
All right, folks, there you have it. Bed Bath and Beyond. Make sure you get out there quick. What's left? All right, let's move to the next one. What's our next topic?
So it looks like we're almost at the halfway time. So we have a get to know you question. And
Oh,
that
don't we have one
is,
more? Don't we have
should I
one
do
more?
that first? That one first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
do one more before we jump into there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the fifth question is the public charge rule, which makes it harder for immigrants to obtain visas or green cards if they have used or are likely to use public benefits like Medicaid or food stamps. Question mark. No
Yeah,
question.
so for oh, sorry, Anthony, you can go.
No,
Go ahead.
go right ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there was always a requirement for immigrants to not be a public charge. That was always a requirement. For family-based petitions, the petitioner has to file what's called an affidavit of support and pledge that the intending immigrant is not going to become a public charge. And if they do, they are legally required to pay for their public debt or things like that if the government comes to them and requests it. The problem is that this is never enforced. I've literally never heard of any sponsor, being the government coming to them and saying, "Hey, this beneficiary signed up for Medicaid or food stamps. You have to pay for that." It just really doesn't happen. So I'm a little skeptical. What is the point of this current, update to the public charge rule? Likely to use public benefits. How are you going to determine that? It's seems like there's a lot of factors. There's a lot of discretion on the side of the officer. So I'm a pretty skeptical of this one. I also don't see the point of it because this rule already existed and it's not enforced by our government. So, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, just to reiterate or and continue to on with what Lauren was mentioning, you know, the people, the programs, everything is set up where they're going to ask if you're a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident. Very rarely are you going to be in the position where you're actually given something or a benefit such as this, one of the medical benefits, for example, or some financial assistance that isn't already, you're not entitled to. And then in addition to that, there's a lot of exceptions. So the key is because it's a very convoluted and you have to do the details. There are resources that if you call us, you let us know what program you have, we can check with people out there to make sure that, your usage of that service or benefit is not going to negatively impact your immigration case. But like Lauren said, never an issue. We've been doing this for a very long time. And the key, though, is to communicate effectively with your attorney. Let us know, give us all the details about the program so we can always confirm. Anything else you wanted to add, Hogan, about?
Oh yeah, I mean, this is very. I think during the last administration, they really focused on vague law, where the heavy lifting wasn't done by the law, but it was done by regulations.
Mm,
I think the Immigration and Nationality Act just says applicants cannot be a public charge, and then historically that was defined as the categories: education, health, income, and cash assistance. So this is really more an interpretation thing, where the law says very vague, can't be a public charge. Doesn't say what a public charge is or is not. But I think it's that due to that vagueness, why it was never really enforced outside of the affidavit of support. And like Lauren said, I don't think there really is an appetite to enforce it in majority of people, because people come here for a better life, not to make it harder for them to even come here.
all right. Ready for the get to know you question? Let's try that.
Yes, now I am. So the question is, what is your favorite thing about practicing immigration?
Anyone want to go first?
I can, sure. I mean, this is cheesy, but definitely just being able to help people is the obvious answer, but it's the truest one. You don't go into immigration because you want to be this like big shot attorney. Immigrants don't tend to have a lot of money because they are, new to this country. So obviously we make a living, but it's really for trying to help people. I also get to practice my Spanish, which is fun, and keep up with that skill is also a good thing because otherwise I probably wouldn't be able to speak Spanish. So.
Sort of similar to what Lauren had mentioned, one of the main reasons I got involved in immigration was to use my language skills as well. I did my undergrad in Japanese, so at the time when I started practicing in bankruptcy law initially. And, there were not many people who were speaking Japanese in the Midwest that needed that service. So immigration was a great opportunity for us, or for me, to work with corporations and individuals with my language skills. And immigration really is great for that because you're dealing with people from all around the world, and English is not their first language. And it's really good for, having struggled to learn a language myself, I can empathize with that person and have a lot more patience as they try to learn English, which is for many people quite challenging. So, I mean, it that's why I got involved, and that's why I enjoy it. I also enjoy working with people from all around the world. The many cultures, the gifts we receive, the things we learn and receive from you, the foreign community, is just awesome. It's a big world out there. It's awesome. So, and have friends everywhere you go, especially when you're traveling, no matter what. How about you, Hogan?
I think it's a combination of both. I really like seeing those happy faces, especially when it's a difficult case or a heart wrenching case, and you end up winning. They get their green card, and then they're ecstatic. They don't even know what to say. Or I used to be in a different firm, but I remember one client, we won her asylum case, and she brought us a customary like food from her country. It was good, and then a bunch of other. I think that became a thing where every client, um, where we won their case similar, they would just bring us all this food, and we'd never be hungry. And then the other fun thing that goes in hand with that is just learning about different cultures. I was born in Mexico. That's all of Latin America that I knew. And then when I started working in immigration, I'm like, oh, wait, it's bigger. But some Hispanics don't like spicy food, or some of them really love sweet food, or their music's different, or their Spanish is completely different, where it's even a different kind of language at one point. I love learning those different tidbits, and especially in just Latin America, where it's very very different depending on where you go, even the language.
All right. Thank you, guys. Let's move on to the next question. What's next?
Okay, so the next one is: have you heard about the USCIS filing fees increasing? Talk about what we should expect in 2023. Inflation is not just limited to the grocery store, especially eggs, but it's impacting USCIS filing fees. I bought eggs the other day. Um, I remember there were 293 last year. This year they were like seven. I think 790 something. And then, yeah, I read a report. It was because of swine flu killed like a 40% of birds
Oh,
this year.
really?
Avian
Yeah,
flu. Swine is
yeah.
big.
It was kind of bad. I'm like, yeah, it's like $7 for eggs.
Well, they did the same thing, and I don't shop too much, but when I was looking for wings, of course, to grill,
Oh,
you
same.
know, oh my God, I was like, I'll just stick with chicken thighs and drumsticks. This is crazy
Yeah.
expensive for the wings. So maybe some of the avian flu also killed off the chicken wings industry as well. So those prices were outrageous. All right. So I'm going to jump into this. The USCIS has already issued and alerted us that, hey, filing fees are going up. So one of the main things we want to alert you to, doesn't matter whether you're employment-based, family-based, if you have a case to file, you want to file it now. We don't know exactly when those filing fees are going to go in place. The 60-day, public review period is in place right now, and I believe that ends, you guys can correct me, sometime in March. So pretty much any time after that or so, it could go into effect. Some people are saying they still have to put more details and update everything, so it could be in the fall. The key is the government isn't going to tell us. And so the longer you wait or sit on the case, or, wait, or I'll just try to do it myself, and you continue to procrastinate, call us up. Let us get the case filed. Let us save you a few $100s, in filing fees alone, and make sure that your case is filed properly. It's not going to get rejected, and you're going to have all the insights. As we mentioned at the top of the video, immigration changes each year, and this is just a huge example of that. So I didn't want to get into all of it. Maybe Lauren or Hogan might want to touch on a few, maybe they had some other comments regarding the filing fee increase that we're going to see in 2023.
I mean, yeah. If you haven't filed, you should definitely file because this time they do have a good reason why they're increasing fees. But I think one of the entities that are going to bear the biggest brunt of the increase are going to be companies. Just because they're almost doubling almost every single fee, and for companies they're just creating new fees, um, which is outside of just doubling fees. They're just adding more fees on top of the fees. One of the little ones, the H-1B registration went from $10 to I think $250. So if it was a company just like filing them ahead of time, I mean, if you haven't already and you're planning on your fiscal year this year and next year, if it's here next year, it's gonna definitely gonna make a big dent if you're hiring a lot of foreign workers. And then same thing for the family based. If you haven't filed yet, or naturalized, even, um,
Hmm.
we always encourage people to naturalize, but especially now, where it's unlikely that many of these are going to be changed. I'm guessing some of them or all of them are going to be uh, have court challenges. But I think at the end of the day, at one point, USCIS is going to be successful in passing most of these fee increases.
You mentioned court challenges, Hogan. Doesn't it seem like everything that's proposed on immigration gets challenged in court, whether for or against?
Yeah, it's been a really messy couple 5 years.
Wow. Wow. Lauren, any comments on filing fees?
I'm just hoping that they are kind of doing the thing where they, when you want something, you ask for like an outrageous amount, and then in reality, you want less. So then they, maybe they're willing to come down a bit from what they're expecting. Hopefully, we'll see that. Uh, I don't know. Yeah, those filing fees are a lot, and they're never going to go down once they're up. um so we'll have
And
to see.
also, if you guys remember, I think it was during the prior administration, there was a threat or proposed huge increase in filing fees as well at that time, wasn't there? And I don't think that came into
Yeah,
fruition.
that one didn't. So there is
Yeah,
hope, but like Hogan said, now there's inflation, so they have
Exactly.
this. If they were going to raise the filing fees and improve their services, I might actually be for it if they could issue receipt
unlikely.
notices on time and not have 3 years to process a case at the Texas Service Center. But you know I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're just going to get more money, unfortunately.
Well, one of the other things, just remember for those out there in the EB5 category for our entrepreneur investors, those fees had already skyrocketed, and they've increased as well. So, you know, everyone out there, if you've got an immigration case, probably early 2023 is the best time to do it. It's just going to cost you more. Everything's going to cost more in 2023. All right, let's hit the next one.
Okay, so the next one is, will 2023 see the end of the diversity visa lottery, which granted visas to individuals from countries with low rates of immigration to the United States?
I'm going to jump into this. This is maybe one of those conspiracy theories out there, but um, a lot of people don't see the need for this, and may say it's not fair that we treat this as a lottery and give out green cards, but this is sort of our history, and it was really introduced to bring fairness to certain countries and actually get more people here because we actually needed people, and to be honest, we still need a lot more people coming in. So just I think it may be very difficult to get rid of it. However, there has been talk or discussion of somehow amending it. But any thoughts out there?
I don't think they should. I think it's a cool program. I
Yeah.
mean, hardly anyone, when it's literally like winning the lottery. Like the H-1B is really hard to get, but the diversity visa is, compared to most immigration, it's almost nothing. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. I've heard of a couple clients who've gotten it. they've won it.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I
I
had
think it's
a
cool bringing other people from, countries that don't normally have any chance to come here.
I had a professor in my undergrad, and she also worked at where I worked previously. She actually came here with the diversity visa lottery.
Mhm.
But I remember during last administration where the name makes it sound like they don't vet people. We're just oh anyone can come here, but I think it's multiple like levels of vetting. Or at the registration they vet you, at the application stage they vet you, at admission they vet you when you come in already here they vet you again, and then when you apply for a green card they vet you again, and then when you naturalize you vet you again.
Medical
Uh,
Mhm.
exams, all that.
yeah, the whole thing. It's just one of those programs where I don't see why you would end it. It accounts for like probably less than 1/10% of total U.S. immigration. Um,
One of the things to also, for our listeners out there, one of the things to remember with the diversity program, registration is free. Always in the fall, October 1st. Go ahead, register online. If you need help, you can, but you really don't need support. Don't pay a person, loads of money. Now, if you're selected, that doesn't mean you're going to get it. You still got to, there's still a process. They've got to see the visa numbers available. Oftentimes they take more people than are qualified because there's a certain ratio of people who don't make it. So keep that in mind as well. But what I do recommend is once you know you're selected, get the help of a professional. I've talked to too many people that have let this opportunity pass because they didn't know the process or the timeline, or maybe the government didn't communicate with them. So keep that in mind. The second thing is there's a current lawsuit that is in play right now where a lot of people during the pandemic couldn't get their immigrant visas because of the pandemic. And, the courts have ordered the Department of State to issue these immigrant visas. And the Department of State says, no, we don't need to do that. And the court is overreaching. So that is a battle going on. So there's like 30,000, immigrant visa, should be immigrant visas holders that missed their opportunity due to the pandemic. So, keep an eye out for that. But just realize, even if you're selected, life happens. So we're not going to make it through our top 10, but let's go quickly.
okay, so the next one is: will there be an expansion of expedited removal, which allows immigrant officials to deport certain individuals without a hearing in front of an immigration judge?
I would say this is probably likely. Depends on court challenges. Obviously, we keep talking about those. It seems like everything these days, there's always a court challenge. But for expedited removal, it's a pretty popular program. Um, for if someone is near the border, and near is pretty it's pretty wide range of locations, and they just came in or something like that, they can pretty much automatically be sent back. That's what expedited removal is. And it seems to be a popular program. People want movement at the border. Everyone, Republicans and Democrats, know it's a huge problem at the border. Whether or not you think this is the correct way to solve it is a different story. But the government wants to do something, and this seems to be, one of their only tools that they can use sometimes.
Yeah, I see it, also. I mean, it is popular. It's a way to somewhat address the issue, but when there's 1.6 million asylum backlogs, and it just comes back to Congress. These small things such as expedited removal, where you expedite them back, what are the people going to do? Go around? They got nowhere else to go. They're going to go around and come back in, and it doesn't solve the overall problem. These people have given up. They have nothing to go back to, you know, and there's no incentive to go back to their home. They have all the incentive and drive to be here in the U.S. and just make a living for themselves. So, yeah, I see it happening. I think, again, it's another tool that isn't going to really make much of a difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think I would repeat what Anthony said. It's a good tool on its face, but it really doesn't solve the root issues. Where if you deport someone, they're not going to go back home because they've completely abandoned that home. And if they're fleeing violence or terror in their country, why would they go back to terror and violence? They would just risk their life again and come to the U.S. only to be removed again, and then they're just going to keep doing it until they come back. And really, the issue is compounded by the increased population and the lack of action by Congress to amend the immigration laws, which are just completely outdated.
Agree. What's our next one?
Uh, well, we see a reduction of the number of refugees allowed to enter the U.S. each year.
I'm going to jump in on this one. Unfortunately, I hope we don't see a continued reduction in 2023, but we're not bringing in as many people as we really used to. And, part of it was a prior administration reduction, a huge reduction on that. And then, is it popular to increase that? I know with Ukraine, people were saying, hey, let's increase that number and bring a lot of people from Ukraine, a great reason and everything, but we never saw the needed influx. A lot of those refugees went to Europe and everything. Maybe that's a deal between the governments where I thought it was a deal between the governments where Europe would take care of that and we would support them militarily. But either way, I don't see that yet because sort of the political liability of whoever proposes that in a way. I would love to see it increase because you're helping people. There's lines and people who really need us in Africa and all throughout the world. But yeah, it's still really low. It's still really low. What do you guys think?
Oh,
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a reduction. I think they, are probably going to have to take more Ukrainians. They're taking more Haitians in this, you know, temporary program, but I'm sure, a significant amount of them will be able to adjust status or find some other path to obtain the green card. So I don't see that lowering at all.
yeah. I mean, if things continue how they are with the current administration, I know the last one really cut it significantly. Um, but I don't think the world's gonna be more civil. I think the need for refugees is at least gonna increase, and I don't see it decreasing further. It might decrease depending on U.S. politics, but really, it is an important program keeping alive.
Okay, we do have one question from the audience. Does your law firm have bilingual Japanese English read write staff? Did you ever work with Japan-based companies for immigration? Yes, we do. I've been working with Japanese companies for the past 20 years. We do have Japanese nationals on board. 日本人のスタッフ、私も日本語も喋りますけれども、もう20年以上、日系企業と一緒に、協力して、移民サービスを提供しております。ぜひ、私たちにいつでもご連絡してください。この下の、電話番号と、E メール住所に、ご連絡してください。私たちのスタッフをお待ちしております。よろしくお願いいたします。So, one more question, and I think we're going to call it a day.
I think I'm gonna do the 11th one, because it's a lot more interesting.
Okay.
That's okay. As USCIS encourages online filing, what are some of the pros and cons in 2023 that we should expect?
So I can jump in for this one. For online filing, the pro is that pretty much right away if it's accepted, which is nice. For paper-based filing, there's always the risk that if you make an error, let's say you're filing it on your own and you're not 100% aware of the process, but you want to save some money, well, that package could get returned to you if it's not filed properly, and that can take weeks because their mail is really slow, and then sometimes the US Postal Service is really slow. So it's nice to automatically get a receipt or some sort of notification that your petition is accepted. The problem with online filing is that it's a newer system. USCIS is trying to slowly roll it out to more and more types of applications, but it we have had some issues with it. Whether it's receiving notifications, whether it's difficulty uploading, um, you know, just them
Systems
messing
down.
things up.
Yeah.
But yeah, Anthony can complain a little more about that because we've got some complaints. We stick to paper filing as much as possible for now until they, once they get it working well, then I'm sure it'll be great. We don't have to waste so much money on paper, but
Yeah, I think on the family-based side, online filing may be something that's advantageous if they are consistent and get a really good system that doesn't shut down or have technical problems. One of the things we always see in immigration is every year during H-1B season, a system goes down because of overload, maybe too many people. There's so many things that the USCIS hasn't planned for or tested. So the system is not 100% reliable. And when you submitted, not being able to talk to anybody to resolve it or get quick responses, that frustrates our clients, and we want them to have a good experience. I did have one attorney, or know of one attorney, I think it was in the New Jersey area, they had filed a lot of naturalization cases, and the system went down and they couldn't even get access. And I mean, it's a nightmare. And when you can't get access and the system to the system and the documents you need. So for the immediate time, we tend to use paper filing. For some cases, we will do online. But what we have seen is in the more complicated cases, like the employment-based cases, when we're filing 500, 600 pages, we can't upload that. There's no way to do those. And those documents are often requested by the USCIS anyway. So, that's why it depends on the type of immigration business that you're doing and when USCIS and other agencies get to the point that they can actually handle high volume cases.
Yeah. I guess for online filing, it might make some people's lives easier if the USCIS can deliver, which I highly doubt, just because they've really fumbled the ball a couple of times. They really are encouraging it, so hopefully, like in their fee increases, they're differentiating between the price for a paper filed, which I think, and an online file. I think it's like a $90 difference, not too big. But they do give you a discount if you file online. Their system is definitely better than the Department of State. I've used it before. At least it doesn't kick you out every time you breathe. But if they can get it right, I don't. Right now, I hate doing them every time I have to do one online, especially when you're working with a client that isn't tech savvy, where you need their input, their password, two-factor authentication. If they can solve those issues and just make them more usable for the layperson, I think it would be a success. But for right now, I would still stick to paper filing everything.
Well, Hogan, I think you touched on one thing. A lot of the community is not tech savvy.
Yeah.
And going online, as I think Lauren had mentioned before, they're rolling out these programs in cultures where, yeah, they use their smartphone and WhatsApp or WhatsApp, but, trying to fill this all out and have everything work properly, it's not true and tested yet.
Yeah.
So, although it may save some time, I think, I don't think the immigration community as a whole is where it needs to be from a technology side. And then definitely on the business side, they've got to be able to allow us to upload, hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents or large file sizes in order to make sure that we get these cases approved.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, everyone who joined us today and asked questions, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, I'm Anthony, joined here today by Lauren and Hogan for our January webinar. We'll have one scheduled for February coming up. feel free to reach out to us in advance and check out our YouTube channel. And check out videos. There'll be new videos coming out on various topics such as H-1Bs and TPS. And I think there's a video coming out even regarding Naomi Osaka, actually. So immigration touches all aspects of our lives. So again, thank you for joining us. You everyone have a great day, and we'll see you next time.